Brought to you by JEGS.
Today's carburetors from Edelbrock offer better out-of-the-box performance than ever, with models available that are suitable for a wide range of engine types, sizes, and applications. Once you've selected the right Edelbrock carb for your engine, some basic tuning steps will be necessary to ensure your carburetor performs at its best. Before you begin, you'll need to gather a few tools and examine the carburetor to get familiar with it. You may notice some fluid remaining in the carburetor or a solvent smell. This is normal. Every Edelbrock carburetor is factory flow tested before shipment, and a small amount of liquid will remain. To tune your carb, you'll need a vacuum gauge, a tachometer, and Edelbrock's calibration kit for your model carburetor. Before you begin, you should also make sure your ignition components like spark plugs, plug wires, distributor cap, and rotor are all in good condition, and that the engine timing is properly set. Your Edelbrock carburetor is designed for a maximum of 6.5 psi. So check your fuel pressure and adjust the regulator if applicable. Edelbrock carburetors are not intended for use with alcohol or E85 fuel. The carburetor has several external ports and inlets. If your distributor uses timed vacuum advance, connect its vacuum hose to the passenger side vacuum port. If it has full vacuum advance, use the driver's side vacuum port. Transmissions with vacuum modulators should also be connected to the driver's side port. In the center, the PCV port should be capped if it isn't used, and on the rear of the carburetor, the power brake port should be sealed with the included pipe plug if it isn't connected to a brake booster. Edelbrock provides a detailed instruction booklet with every carburetor that describes how to tune your new carburetor and what components from the calibration kit to select for a particular use. Your carb is designed to be adjustable, and following Edelbrock's tuning instructions won't affect your carburetor's warranty. Follow along as we show you how to adjust idle mixture, calibrate the power mode staging, and set basic metering. The first step in achieving a proper carb tune is setting the idle mixture and speed. With the engine warmed up, the choke fully open, the air cleaner in place, and the ignition timing properly set, adjust the engine to the desired RPM using the idle speed screw, located on the throttle assembly. Slowly adjust the idle mixture screw on the side of the carburetor to get the maximum possible RPM. Turning the screw clockwise creates a leaner air-fuel mixture, while turning it counterclockwise makes the mixture richer. If adjusting the mixture screw increases idle speed more than 40 RPM, adjust the idle speed screw to return to your desired idle. Repeat the process with the idle mixture screw on the other side. Then adjust the idle speed screw again to return to the desired RPM. Now, carefully trim each idle mixture screw to get the maximum idle RPM. Then go clockwise on both screws just enough to drop the idle by 20 RPM. Reset the idle RPM screw to your target idle speed, and you have found the lean, best idle setting. An idle mixture richer than this will not improve idle quality or performance, but could cause spark plug fouling. With the idle mixture and speed properly set, you can continue fine-tuning your Edelbrock carburetor with internal adjustments in a few minutes, and without removing the carburetor from your vehicle. For improving drivability at mid-throttle, the first place to start is with the step-up springs. These springs will help control the transition between cruising and power conditions, and will often provide the solution to tuning issues without further changes. They are located beneath two covers on the top of the carburetor, held down by torque screws. By loosening but not removing the screws and swinging the covers aside, then removing the step-up pistons and metering rods, you can access the springs without removing the top of the carburetor. Edelbrock carburetors ship with orange step-up springs that are designed to transition or stage to the power mode at 5 inches of mercury on a vacuum gauge. Edelbrock offers a total of 4 different step-up springs rated at 4, 5, 6, and 8 inches of mercury. As a rule of thumb, you should measure your idle vacuum and use a step-up spring rated at half that value. In other words, if your gauge shows 8 inches of mercury at idle, the yellow spring in your calibration kit, rated at 4 inches of mercury, is a good starting point. If half your idle vacuum falls between spring ratings, try the stronger spring first. If you are experiencing mid-throttle drivability issues and don't have a vacuum gauge available, try the strongest spring first to see if it helps the problem. And if it does, try each successively lighter spring until the problem returns to determine the correct spring. If changing setup springs doesn't cure the problem, The next step will be to refer to the calibration reference chart to select another combination of main jets and metering rods. Your carburetor's manual includes calibration reference charts that show the effect of different metering rods and jet combinations. Moving horizontally across the chart takes you from lean on the left to rich on the right for power mode. Moving vertically from the bottom to the top does the same for cruise mode. The diagonal shaded area section of the chart shows the range of typical jetting and metering rod combinations, with the factory combination in the center. Edelbrock carburetors are equipped with either a manual or electric choke, depending on the model you choose. For electric choke versions, it's best to set your electric choke a couple of times throughout the year, once during cooler weather and once during warmer weather. An easy way to set your electric choke is to loosen the 3 screws on the choke cap and slide a credit card between the choke door and the carburetor air horn. Lightly turn the cap clockwise to tighten or counterclockwise to loosen. Snug the choke door to the credit card, tighten the choke cap screws, and remove the card. One thing to note is that the calibration of the Edelbrock carburetors of the same CFM rating will be different between electric and manual choke versions. Manual choke carburetors are calibrated for maximum performance, while electric choke versions are calibrated for fuel economy, so it is always important to reference your owner's manual before making any adjustments. With your Edelbrock calibration kit for your specific model or carburetor, you'll be able to switch to any of the black circle combinations of jets and metering rods, while individual additional parts will allow you to achieve the white circle calibrations. Rod changes can be accomplished without removing the top of the carburetor through the same covers used to change the step-up springs, by simply removing the stock metering rods from the pistons and replacing them. Primary and secondary jet changes require removal of the carb cover by detaching the choke and accelerator pump linkages and removing the 8 torque screws that secure the cover. You can easily remove the top of the carburetor without risk of fuel spilling thanks to the design of the Edelbrock Carb. Simply lift the air horn off straight up and gently roll it upside down front to back. This will prevent the float pins from sliding out. Once removed, you have a clear path to your carburetor jets. There are many ways to fine-tune your Edelbrock carburetor for best performance at part and wide open throttle, as well as secondary jet changes, setting the fuel float height, changing the accelerator pump engagement, and much more. Your owner's manual contains detailed information on every aspect of Edelbrock carburetor installation and tuning, and includes a complete troubleshooting guide. For additional questions or more information about Edelbrock carburetors, call and speak to a JEGS tech at 1-800-345-4545.
Brought to you by JEGS.